Today on Toy DOMination, we're going to talk about some animated cartoons, and we've got a lot of special guests with us today. We've got the top right or left. I don't know my orientations. We've got Robin, and then we've got Adam from Go Figure, and we got Zagel from Sergeant Slaughterhouse, and the ghost with the most, Zaz, who for some reason we can't display, but his voice is here. If you listen closely.
Oh, look at that.
Hey, there he is. There he is.
It's the Gaz Man.
Who may or may not be in witness protection. We don't know.
Yeah.
So, Adam, between the two of us, we could be Jim Henson, and we could be Frank Oz. If we just raise our arms, and we can.
I was gonna have this on it. Oh, it's horrible.
Why is there a couple of juice box?
Look at that.
I have this mat. This is my daughter's Batgirl like dress up mat, and I'm like, this is killing me. I can't do this. Robin's unmasked.
Hey, thanks everybody who's continued following this Saturday morning block of cartoons. Started over in Sergeant Slaughter's house with some G.I. Joe talk. Went to Adam for some real Ghostbusters and Thundercats, and now we're pulling out of the '80s and jumping into the '90s. We're going to talk Batman the Animated Series. Quite well, not to opinion
on what, Dom? Cartoons and cereal.
That's right. Yeah.
Now I'm ready for action.
Man,
I wanted to say though, Joe, when you were like dressed as Robin, you're like, "Oh, this is killing me." I'm like, "No, Jason Todd, don't do it."
Wrong, Robin. Wrong, Robin.
Hey, thanks for everybody who's carried it on so far. So let's go ahead and kick this off. I think we're gonna start with some Batman the Animated Series. So fair warning, Joe is deep in the Batman the Animated Series. I absolutely love it. This is one of those cartoons that Joe and I knew each other at the same time while it was out, so we were talking about this cartoon while it was current. Much like
kind of in real time,
Saturday morning stuff we were talking about as kids. Like Joe and I were like, "Did you see that one? Oh, my family." My family. We have
frozen,
inside
frozen
jokes
in my brain
still about watching these together, and then later we discovered we both watched Exosquad too. So, Joe, I think we should kick this off with some Batman.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little Batman animated series. I thought I'd. So first of all, it's so much to unpack with Batman that I was like, I'm gonna focus on like some of my favorite episodes, and we can just kind of roll through those and discuss them in that kind of order. But also, I've got this is all these Batman animated series.
Oh,
here.
nice.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, the new toys are fantastic, though. I mean, and also the old toys were great. But, you know, some of those...
Speaking of the old toys, when those that first run came out, I remember it being, like my mind not being able to digest it, because it was the first time you saw Batman that was different than like a muscular superpower style Batman. Because we had superpowers, we had Toy Biz, then we had the Dark Knight series from Kenner, and they were all like these like highly like sculpted, like very realistic looking Batman. And then you got one that looked just like the cartoon. I remember the first cartoon like Batman figure we ever got, and it was just like, this is so different and so cool.
Yeah, and so the weird thing for me with those toys is that it actually like it fit well enough with the movie toys that you could kind of just like smush them together and be like, oh well, Bob the Goon, yeah, sure, that makes sense, you know, kind of thing. And Robin, for instance, was basically the same toy but with animated colors and a different head sculpt.
Yeah,
kind of
those were. I loved that they actually packaged a goon, like Bob the Goon. They kicked him around, like that was awesome. Yeah. So.
I mean, they didn't really have a lot of other options, though, did they? If they were gonna, you've got the Joker, and who else are you going to use? It's got to be Bob the Goon.
That's true.
The Retro Tinker saying he wanted to buy Fruit Loops. Fruit Loops was my cereal of choice when I was a kid. I had some Cocoa Pops, but they're now all over the floor. So I don't know how to adult still.
I may have had a costume spillage twice on Zazel's show, so I've since. And then Adam shamed me with the noise, and now I know that I'm supposed to. I don't do the truffle shuffle.
That's exactly right.
There's a lot of good comments in Exosquad in the chat, and please recycle those back in because I'm dying to talk. I'm dying to talk Exosquad.
We're talking about Batman.
I know. I'm just like I wish I could pin all of those. So go ahead, Joe. Batman.
Are we talking Exosquad? No, Batman.
Love it. Oh man. Hey, let me pause real quick. So
wrong era.
you two are not only my favorite for those kind of dad puns, but honestly, like Joe and I have talked about this offline before. Of all our collaborators and all our friends out there, like we love them all dearly, but we often look to you two. Like I reach out to both of you for like, hey, there's a thing that I'm dealing with. How do I deal with this? You're almost the dads as I look at, and that's a respectful term. No, it's respectful of YouTube streamers that I look to. I'm like, hey man, so this kind of happened with this guy. What do I do? Or like, hey, I don't know. And like, I constantly these like wise men of like, hey Dom, just blah blah blah. I'm like, man, I'm so glad I turned to you guys. Like honestly, your channels that I like to follow because of who you are. Your content's good too, but I like you guys a lot, and like I think that more channels should model off you guys' behavior. Like that's a very strong compliment. Like how you handle yourself.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. All the like genuine sentiment that it is, but it is also funny to be like, you guys are like the dads, and you're literally just like a juice box right now.
Thanks, Dad. Thanks. And my cereal. Thanks, Dad.
Hey, I'm also dressed as a sidekick, so you're like my fathers.
Yeah.
The Council of Dads.
Before we get into Batman the Animated Series, I don't know what I'm going to say, Joe, but I just want to say the performance by Mr. Freeze in these first few seasons, like I know it's not a movie, but someone's got to give him an Oscar because it's just next level.
All right, so this is my top 5, and I kind of pulled them out of my other side of my body, but we can go out of order. I don't care. It doesn't have to be like so. While we're on Mr. Freeze, let's talk about Heart of Ice. Yes. My favorite. It's my top spot.
It's fantastic.
Favorite episode.
Chilling, isn't it? It would move me to tears if they were.
I mean, first of all, this episode won an Emmy, so I mean, like that speaks volumes right there. But like the animation was like some of the episodes had slightly better animation than others, and just like they had more budget for that one, and they're like, oh, we'll spend it on this episode. But this was one of them. But yeah, Heart of Ice is by far my favorite episode of Batman, and I think it's because they took a character like Mr. Freeze, which is innately ridiculous in the comic books and the movies. Well, he wasn't in the movies yet at this point, and just made him insanely well, like so much depth, so much character, so like just took it to another level. Yeah. Made him amazingly scary to fight, awesome villain, just fantastic episode.
We were at a bigger church at our last station, and my wife was the director of this big Christmas play we were doing. And so one of the characters was playing the angel Gabriel that came down, and she's supposed to act like other earthly and like not have any human relatable qualities. And no one knew that meant or like how to do it. And so I brought her to the DVD. I was like, watch Heart of Ice to the actor who was playing there. And I was like, play it like Mr. Freeze. And then so like we had that happen, and it was perfect because it was like it's what takes the form of somebody's human, but they've lost their humanity. And in that voice performance, that's exactly what you get.
Yes,
his lack of emotion and just like his delivery of every line in that episode is just spectacular. Batman's actually truly having a problem fighting him. Yeah. He literally beats him with chicken soup that Alfred gave him because he had a cold for the first time they fought. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Also, it was a rare occasion of a sympathetic villain. Like, you saw he was cold. And
there's a lot of that in Batman.
But he's trying. So, I mean, in general, right? So, like, this is the first time where you're like, oh. Like, I remember showing this to Tristan. He was like, I don't really think he's a bad guy, Dad. I'm like, all right, let's pause. He did freeze those people and didn't care if they died or not, and he's robbing. He's like, oh yeah, but he wants to save his wife. Like a good gray moral dilemma to tackle, and like it's awesome to have, like you said, an emotionless dead character to go through that. Really cool.
But I think the best villains don't know they're villains, right? And Mr. Freeze is
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's also got to, you look at the line one bad day. Like it takes one bad day to turn everything around. And his one bad day was the unfortunate issue with his wife. I can't remember what the actual her condition was, but when you think about it, right?
I think it's kind of left vague.
McGregor's
right.
Oh yeah, that's
but at some point, when it comes down to because Batman could have easily gone down this road as well. When he lost everything to him. And continued to lose throughout, the Batman series. When you think about it, he's tackling these sort of similar issues, and maybe is overstepping the mark with what he should and shouldn't be doing as a hero. But when you look at Mr. Freeze, I mean, at what point do you go, okay, well, he's exhausted all these possibilities. Now he has to step over a line.
Right.
He has to step over this line to get where he needs to go. And that's the age-old conundrum of, would you pull a lever to save 5 people if it meant you had to kill one? So, how many people will he sacrifice in order to save the one that is his world, basically?
Well, what was that?
I am not a juice box. I'm an E-frame. It's very obvious, but I'm an E-frame.
What was that movie with Denzel Washington where his son went to the hospital and they couldn't afford his heart? And so Denzel Washington held hostages in the hospital.
I know what you're talking about, but it's slipping my mind.
John Q. Who said John Q?
I did.
It was someone in the chat.
Oh, the ghost of Gaz.
Gaz, the ghost.
Gaz is here.
And so that was the hero. The hero of that story had a son who needed an operation he couldn't afford, and the hospital said no. So he went and he held the hospital hostage.
That's right.
That's not very different than the story arc of Mr.
Desperation. Yeah. No.
Right.
Batman. So one of the comments is Batman redefined a lot of how we saw Batman in both the villains and heroes. I would say it was as defining to Batman as the Dark Knight in the comic book. Like that changed comic book milestones. That's a benchmark of milestones. I'd say Batman the Animated Series was equal in changing not only Batman, but also a lot of animation was trying to keep pace with the animated series after that. So,
Comment.
I thought you were puppeteering Dom.
Yeah, puppeteering Dom. No, I would think that it was more so than the Dark Knight Returns. Dark Knight Returns is
100%.
Like remembered as this great comic book, but it's not a typical Batman story. It's like a very weird Batman
story. But what it did was open the door from 70s and camp to dark and
that's what I mean. Milestone.
It turned that corner, but Batman the Animated Series redefined the typical average Batman story and told a linear story.
100%.
The actual Batman.
Unlike any other movie or any movie has accomplished with Batman, the show, and granted they had many more hours to tell the story, but they show Batman in every aspect of the detective, the Bruce Wayne story aspect, the Batman aspect, the father figure, and then they just go down the line, why he can't have a love life really, every time he has a relationship at all, it crumbles apart, kind of thing.
So Joe, so Grey Ghost was my favorite episodes. What's one of your
not on my list,
episodes?
but what's one of my other favorite episodes? Well, we'll start with we'll go back from 1 back to 5. It's Feet of Clay. This one is fantastic. It's a 2-parter, but it counts. But seeing this is one of those times, much like Mr. Freeze, that they took Clayface, this kind of not well done character in the comic books, and kind of just gave him this amazing backstory and kind of amalgamated a bunch of Clayfaces, because there's more than one in the comics, but kind of put him into one character, made it unique, made him have a motivation kind of thing. But it's just an example of just the best monster / body horror episode ever. The animations of the transitions we're seeing now, just beautiful. They did such a good job with this. And in the end, he tricks Batman and gets away. It's spectacular. Anyway, one of my favorite episodes of all time. Granted, they're all so good, so it's really hard to pick, but.
The other thing about this episode is it redefined how Clayface appeared in the comics. This was the first.
Yeah, it really did. It this once again, like Mr. Freeze, updated the comic books. They took all this junk from the comics and were throw all this crap out, just make it one guy, and also we'll just pull an amalgamation and this is what he looks like. And then they took that, went back to the comics, and another good thing on that note of Batman the Animated Series, I mean, they invented Harley Quinn. That comes from this cartoon, and then went back into the comics.
Pericles says it has one of the best interrogation scenes ever. I don't remember that one. And then Matt Hagen or Basil Carlo.
Oh, so he's talking about there's a germaphobe bad guy or henchman, and Batman's punching a glass of water and it's slowly shaking off the shelf, and he says it's a disease, but really it's seawater.
That's right. That's right.
He's tricking the guy, and it also one of the best interrogation scenes.
Gaz, do you have any comments? So I feel terrible that you're not even represented on the screen here. Gaz, do you have any comments on these 2 episodes here?
I think the animation in itself turned DC animation in a whole new direction with this series, didn't it? They followed up with Superman, and then most of their movies were all
Justice League Unlimited.
That's right.
Yeah.
Batman Beyond.
Yep.
Yeah, the gothic noir, like the drawn on black, the red skies, the character design, the voice casting, like this, they're not afraid to tell adult themes. Like there's so many good things in this cartoon that it's just like it's almost mind blowing. Like they did a better job than the comic was doing at the time.
I will say the one drawback of this, drawback is that my boys like Batman. They're not huge fans of this show, and because there are dry episodes where there is just him walking around in plain clothes, him investigating something, a lot of talking. I mean, boys are kind of like, I thought Joker was in this episode. I'm like, it'll get there, right? So, and again, my kids are, I don't know where they got the smarts from, but they're way smarter than me. So
I mean,
we
were 10, right? 11, 12, 13 when these episodes were coming out. So we were a little older. You know, like we're ready to see. Like I remember a big thing about this cartoon for me was like, Two-Face was Harvey Dent for a long time, and you're just like, when's he going to be turning into Two-Face? You know, like kind of thing. I was just waiting for him.
I think there's something to be said with the last two shows we just did with Thundercats, Ghost versus G.I. Joe, is that those are very appealing to that demographic. Whereas Batman was like, if my boys are a metric for that, it didn't quite hit. Like if my boys were tuning in Saturday morning cartoons, I'm like, I guess Batman's on. It's good. I don't think it would have latched on as well as the 80s ones we just talked about. So like to compare or contrast.
Speaking of Harvey Dent, didn't like one of his first appearances, he was in the Poison Ivy episode on a date with her before she became Poison Ivy?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first one. I was like, that guy's going to be Two-Face one day.
Uh-huh. And they took their time getting there. He was like Bruce's friend and Harvey Dent for a long time before they were finally like showed Two-Face as a villain.
Dan Jam, I was also watching this in high school, and Joe, a comment says that Bane was the favorite story from the animated series. But what's another one of your favorites?
Number 4, Almost Got Him. It's this fantastic episode where the villains sit around telling stories about how they almost got Batman. Meanwhile, Batman is actually disguised as Killer Croc, and his hilarious like story is like, we were fighting in a quarry, and they're like, yeah, and he's like, and I threw a rock at him, and they're like, what? And he was like, it's a big rock, you know, kind of thing. And it was this fantastic episode of them telling all these stories, and the whole reason he's there and doing this is because Joker still has like a hostage somewhere, so they're like trying to find. He wants to get to the Joker story so they can like figure out where this like, you know, like person is being held, kind of thing. And it wasn't just like this ridiculous story of like the hero or the villains all hanging out together talking. Like there was a B plot, there was a through story, and then you know it turns out all the cops are there at the end, and it was fantastic. But it's one of the best episodes by far.
Chad says he still watches it all the time. I do too. I have to sneak in with my boys, and I have to remind them that they like it. They're like, oh yeah, and actually Tristan loves that same one, Joe. That's one of his favorites.
Oh, it's one of the best episodes.
Yeah, that's really good.
Here's a hot take. Not the best Batmobile.
No.
I agree with you. I remember seeing it and kind of going like, that is one gigantically long rectangle. How could that possibly turn around a corner?
It's you know, like kind of it's a V40. You gotta have.
I love it to this day. I mean, I have it right up behind me, but at the same time, like I agree with you. It's insane. It's artistic, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
functionally ridiculous.
Well,
it's designed for specific angles, for dynamic angle shots.
Yes,
it's like a drag. It cannot make turns. It can only go straight, and that is it. Yeah,
and I think too, coming off of the Keaton Batmobile, which was such a great design.
Oh yeah, that's
true. We went from Keaton to like straight lines, right?
It's this Art Deco version of the Keaton Batmobile. Yeah, you know, like it's this interesting take on that. But
I also love the aesthetics of pseudo 1940s. Right, everyone had Tommy guns with drums. But there were computers, there was airships, like it was a very Elseworld setting.
Well, it was designed visually to fit in with like the old Fleischer Superman cartoons, right? That was what they got all of its like
inspired by. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Mask of the Phantasm Brick and Tire is like, I mean, it's fantastic. But
Joe, I saw that in your theater while you were working there.
That's true.
The mystery of the Phantasm.
I once was a projectionist and would play the movies for other people.
Everyone has a backstory.
So next up, I have Robin's Reckoning. I wonder why I'm wearing this costume right now. This is a fantastic episode. Once again, this specific 2-part episode, the animation was like on a different level. They used a lot of this for the later intro that became like Batman and Robin Adventures or whatever they recalled it in like the next season. But just animation-wise, fantastic. Robin's his origin story / he's also on this path of revenge because they found Tony Zuko, who murdered his parents, in the present day. So it's got like flashbacks that are going back and forth. And Robin, one of my favorite characters of all time, as most of everyone on this channel is well aware. But yeah, this one hit home on a deep level, but also just fantastic animation and story.
Yeah, we just saw an example of my favorite thing this show did. Is it looks like Batman's wearing black and gray, but when light hits him, he's wearing blue and gray.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of a callback. Like, remember what they used to look like? I love that. I love that every time they did it.
Huh. I did not notice that. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, he's highlighted in blue all the time, but when the light actually hits him, his cape is blue.
There's MP44. Whoops, wrong comment there. Yes, but Payne's Toy Sample says, honestly, Joker performance by Hamill is iconic as Conroy and the thin line of insanity. Yeah, so again, I was like maybe 34 years old, like when I learned that Hamill was the voice. I was like, no. It's like, that was Luke Skywalker. I'm like, no. Like, yes, Tom, that's Luke Skywalker doing that voice.
Luke Skywalker
like, wow.
being the Joker did not occur to me until much later on. I definitely didn't know
when he did the voice for the Hobgoblin and Spider-Man as well, and I was like, I couldn't believe he was doing something other than Star Wars. I was like, because I had no clue.
Yeah, of course.
Back then, they didn't really advertise too much about voice actors. But Peppermint Oil Capsule, aka Space Commander, is probably the biggest Robin fan that I've ever met. Even though you're wearing Robin now, Joe. But he's super into Robin. Loved it so much so that he was offended when he got a T-shirt with the picture of Batman slapping Robin for that meme. It was like, what? I can't wear this. That's my boy.
I love Robin to death, but that meme's still funny.
Gaz, again, recognizing you're a ghost in the shadows here. Anything you want to chime in with so far?
Mark Hamill, I think for me, and this is like is a gem in the whole series for me. This is voice acting alone, and I've heard stories about how he would drive to the studio for taping, and he would just be like doing the Joker all the way.
I saw that he looked like a maniac in his car, right? Yeah.
I just thought it was fascinating, and again, I didn't know it was Mark Hamill until I was much older.
Yeah. Also, Conroy, who did Batman, was also. I mean, he kind of coined, or I mean, not coined the phrase, but like started the Bruce Wayne is a ridiculous voice, and I'm Batman, and suddenly I'm serious. Like, even Keaton didn't really change his voice really between Bruce Wayne and Batman. You know, like we kind of think of that happening, but when you watch that movie, he didn't really change or shift. Conroy really like made that a thing. Like, Batman should sound like this, and Bruce Wayne should sound like this, and they're separate people but the same person, kind of thing. But yeah, their voice acting in this is phenomenal.
But Bale then flipped it and made Bruce Wayne sound decent and Batman sound ridiculous.
What are you talking about? Where are the other drugs going?
Mark Hamill prototyped his Joker voice with Trickster in the 90s Flash. Yeah, 100% agree. And you can see elements of Hamill's Joker sliding in other places, but he really dives deep in that with the Joker voice. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Joe, you got another fave?
Last on the list to talk about, I do have some runner-ups that we didn't highlight, but we'll if we have time. Number 2, right under Heart of Ice, is Over the Edge, and it's probably one of the greatest episodes of this series ever. And basically it starts with Jim Gordon brushing through Wayne Manor and breaking into the Batcave and shooting at Batman and Robin. So like it's spectacular. Nightwing gets arrested. They all like, you learn through a flashback that Scarecrow murdered Batgirl and that Jim Gordon found out that it's his daughter by her body hitting his car, kind of thing. And it's brutal. And you're just, the whole time you're watching this episode, you're like, what is happening? This is insane. And so at the very end, like so she got hit with Batman or Scarecrow's fear gas. So it's all in her head. But it's her worst nightmare, so to speak. But it also ends in like a touching moment of her sitting down with her father and being like, so I have this job. So she kind of like went to Jim and like kind of sort of told him what was going on. So that would never happen, kind of thing. Like cutting off that, like, I understand, Bruce, that you have a secret identity, but I have to reveal to my father that I'm Batgirl, or this could happen, kind of thing.
And didn't he like she was gonna say it, and then he kind of like let her know he already knew.
Yeah, he sort of like already knew. Yeah, he's like, you don't have to say anything. Like I get it, kind of thing. So it kind of like assuages her fears in terms of like this could happen one day, and But it's one of my favorite episodes ever. I actually really like the new designs that they did with New Adventures.
So I was gonna say that's from the later. I could tell all the new designs there from everyone. Yeah. So. But that's when I honestly stopped watching it, though. So,
that was after Batman Beyond, right? It went season 1, 2, 3.
I think it was kind of concurrent with it.
Because that design first appeared when they did the two-parter Batman Superman episode.
That's that's right. Actually, yeah.
The name Bailiff Night Court did the voice of Harvey Dent, known as no kidding, huh?
Now I will say my favorite villain, other than Mr. Freeze, in this series was the ventriloquist. Scarface the dummy. I thought what a stupid concept, but terrifying.
There's an episode that was like it's not high enough up for me, but it is on those like on that level of like maybe be my top 10, but it's when he reforms and he's like trying to get away from the dummy.
Oh right. Yeah.
Kind of thing. And the old gang is like chasing him down and kind of like putting the dummy into his apartment at night and he like wakes up and the dummy's like there by the window and he's like, "Oh, you're not real," and he's like freaking out. Kind of, it's really good episode.
Have you seen the old movie Magic?
Yeah, I think so.
With the guy with the ventriloquist dummy.
Wait, no.
Yes,
he's a ventriloquist.
It sounds familiar. No.
And then he like goes away to the cabin, but he starts like playing with his mind, where he's like, he's like a split personality where he is the dummy. And then, like, the dummy's just, like, sitting in chairs. And the whole movie, you're not sure if the dummy's, like, actually possessed or if it's just his own mind. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen that,
it does sound familiar. What's the doll look like? Does it look like an old?
It looks like a Harvey Dent kind of puppet.
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
They took a lot of that and put it into this ventriloquist character in that episode you were talking about.
You know what? People are commenting. Name your favorite villain.
I was about to say, like, so
instantaneously
from the show, not
from the show,
because honestly, Mr. Freeze, I had no idea who that was. The show made him my favorite. Mad Hatter would probably be mine, because
he was non-existent in the comics at that point.
Some pretty dark concepts, but didn't shy away from death. Agreed, mental illness. They definitely dove into those things a lot, and it was again like a very adult topics there that didn't shy away, while still making it PG, obviously. Show made me love Ra's al Ghul, the gentleman villain. When he says detective,
so close. Ra's al Ghul is so close to my list.
In my mind, I can hear it, but every time it comes out, I'm like, detective. I'm like, why can't I do that voice? Like, no. Oh, just
what was his name? Bobo.
His what?
His like Ra's al Ghul.
100% not important because Ra's al Ghul is awesome. That's why none of us remember the henchman's name.
No, I know what you're talking about though.
So Joe, let's see what
Bob
Adam.
The henchman.
Yeah, Bob.
Bob the henchman. Yeah, that was it.
Aged very poorly.
Papa's ass. Yeah.
Adam, what is one of your favorite Batman episodes? And we'll go to the rest of you all. Ubu. Everyone says. Ubu.
Oh, it's Ubu. Yeah, there you go.
Ubu. Yeah, no, Bobo. Ubu. So I'm a big Robin fan, much like Space Commander. So anytime that Robin got featured was great. And there was a Riddler episode where they were like and they had to figure out all the riddles.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's
it's if you're so smart, why aren't you
rich?
Yeah.
And it's one of the best episodes.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. There's another really good Robin episode called Old Wounds, and it kind of catches up why he took off the cape and went Nightwing in between the things. It's great.
Zazel, one of your favorite Batman shows.
So, with the mystery with the Phantasm, I was a big Marvel boy, and my friend was a DC guy, and so we would often we'd still got along. It was no rivalry as such, but the beauty of our friendship was that we got to introduce each other to the different side, right? Like I wouldn't go out and buy a monthly comic, but because he did, I got to learn what was happening through that comic.
Yeah.
And probably the only connective tissue that we had as far as any media was concerned was Batman the Animated Series and the Spider-Man animated series throughout high school, right? Growing up in high school.
Yeah.
And so he would come back to me and say to do with the Batman show, animated series, he would say, "Oh, it's pretty good, but this is how it happened in the comics." And I'd get a little bit of lore to do with that. But I will say that even though the majority of our friends were also Marvel guys, we were all talking about the Phantasm movie because the action figure came out and it was a big mystery, like who's under the mask. And I think that was probably the one that we talked about the most in the schoolyard.
Nice. And then Gaz, circling over to you.
I'd have to say it's that episode with the ninja. I think it's
Oh, those are so.
Yes.
The ninja that comes back to have revenge on Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
That I like that character a lot.
There's one where the ninja shows up, and that's a fantastic episode. But there's one where he comes back. Yes, Tom's doing it already. There's one where he comes back and he does this thing called the touch of death, and it's like 2 fingers of the chest. And Batman's hand is literally animated like this, like blocking it, and it's like the funniest thing. I remember just watching it, kind of going like, "Oh man!" Like,
do you
watching
remember
Clayface transform, and now I'm getting this? Like, what is this? You know?
So in high school, really Joe and I would go around and go touch of death to each other. We just walk away,
literally like smash people in the sternum and say "touch of death."
Also, man, I saw this guy's on Ken's channel, Wheels of Chaotic Doom. I absolutely love that name, and that it's in all caps. Just so good.
Also,
so good.
Please be in our stream every time. I just want to.
I want to be. I'm
just
like,
so I can say it.
Yeah, that's so good. So, Joe, I would say, I would say that my favorite villain and episode is definitely just.
Oh, it's a Pinocchio.
Yeah, it's just Pinocchio.
It's just Pinocchio.
So there's been a lot of love in the chat for the Mask of the Phantasm, and it was like a perfect film. Mm-hmm. Sub-Zero was underrated. That is a great.
Sub-Zero is very underrated.
Fantastic.
There's also that sequel, or a sequelized episode of him called Cold Comfort of Mister Freeze, where it reveals that he's the head, and it like turns around. Batman's fighting him, and he like punches him from behind like a chair, and his head like swivels around, and you're like, "Oh, good lord, what is happening?" And then it like crawls out of the spider. It's so fantastic.
Well, Space Commander called out Sub-Zero earlier, saying that something about Robin in there, but of course he did because he loves Robin. Oh, he goes, "Remember the Sub-Zero movie? Great starring role for Robin."
Yeah,
I don't remember it, but now I'll go back and check it out.
Great.
It's confusing which one.
Yeah, because so Robin doesn't have his own channel. He's part of Toy DOMination. Joe, when we transition to Exosquad, can you drop everyone's channels and the links here?
The channels are in the description below, and also the parts 1 and 2 to the stream.
I did that. I did that this time, right?
But I added parts 1 and 2 to the stream into the description below. So if you missed Zazzle, Sergeant Stardust part 1, if you missed Go Figures part 2, go back and watch those. They're in the description. I'm really smart. I'm on top of my game.
High five. We did it. Teamwork. This time I got it right.
Oh, look at you. I'm so proud. That's my boy.
That wraps up Batman the Animated Series. I do just want to put this up on the screen. These are my runners-up. They're very good episodes.
Oh, yeah. Leather wings. I did not like Catwoman's costume.
Catwoman, this is specifically Cat in the Claw, and it's a fantastic villain. Doesn't exist in the comics. Came out of nowhere. Terrorist threat to Gotham City. Started the whole show. It premiered on a Sunday night on primetime. Fantastic episode. And anyway, on Leather Wings, that first Man-Bat, spectacular.
Yeah.
Spectacular.
I love the screaming children in the back.
Shh, don't pay attention to that. Don't pay attention to that.
In the silence of no one talking, you would hear the scream of children.
There was my son downstairs going,
yeah! There was also a Batwoman movie that came out in like 2004.
There was. And it wasn't good.
It was maybe the low point of this continuity. It was.
Yeah, they're like, just stop.
Yeah.
All right.
Was that their swan song? Was that it? The finale? Was that in that universe? Was that Batgirl?
I guess the real finale would have been the Justice League Unlimited finale.
Yeah. Everything from Batman carried into Superman, carried into Justice League, carried into Justice League.
But after the Justice League finale, the Batwoman movie came out, and it was like, oof.
I don't know what Gap After Dark is, or if you have a channel, but all I can imagine is like an 80s show where the Gap closes and the mannequins come to life and like some shenanigans happen in there. That's what it visualizes. But
I
do
the Gap was around in the 80s?
I don't know. Yeah. Whoa, Zaza, what happened to your face? I'm so.
Well, if everyone's dressing up, I'll do my very best to be a bearded Cobra Commander.
Okay. It's Cobra Commander, obviously.
Or Daft Punk. I'm not sure which one.
It's so clear. It's as clear to
Darth
me that
Commander.
he's Cobra Commander as it is you are in an Exosquad suit.
All right, so that's
I'm a juice box, guys. I'm a juice box.
Yeah, we're gonna end this gag too because
I wanted you to knock over all your collection behind you so badly.
So I almost knocked over the lights too. So
hold on, let me get this straight. You kept that on for the entirety of 2.5 hours, and now that we're finally talking about Exosquad, you're taking it off?
Because now I'm unleashed. I'm like transformed into Dom, the animated and talking here. So all right, so here we go. I cannot contain Exosquad into 30 minutes. It's impossible. I can't cover the themes. I can't cover how it influenced me. It's too much. The character's story, even though it was a very short-lived, relatively, and kind of under-the-radar series. Zazel and Adam and Gaz, did you ever see this? Are you?
Adam's lost it.
I just love that you're like.
Thank you, Gap.
I'm taking off.
It's a very good costume.
And I can't do it justice. Like, there's no way that this is going to be even informative a little bit. Like, why even bother? I'm not going to do a good job explaining why I like Exosquad.
I feel you're assuming the worst of the message.
This is the Batwoman movie segment of this whole trilogy of the.
Dom, don't listen to these naysayers. I'm in your corner, and Exosquad's fantastic. It's one of the best shows ever made.
So
and the toys are amazing.
I muted my earphones, so let me know when they're done trolling me.
Okay.
But have you guys seen this show? Have you seen The Glory? Gaz, I'm reaching out to you too. The ghost.
I have not. Excellent. I have not seen this.
Okay. Zazel.
Oh,
I'm more familiar with the toys than the cartoon, but I've seen the cartoon.
Yeah. And then Adam.
Yeah, no, I wasn't like hooked to it, but it was in the peripheries, and I definitely wouldn't turn it off.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, help me with the check because I'm going to be.
Of course,
be homed in here. Okay?
I gotcha.
So, all right, the toys, that's a whole nother bag because I love them equally but separately. Like, they are so and I found the toys first and then discovered the episode. So
weren't the toys some of the Robotech designs?
They squeezed those in afterwards, and I've been playing with those recently because I got like a bundle of them for like $10 or whatever. But yeah, they definitely squeezed Robotech in under that license in some sort of weird, I don't know how they were.
Most of them were just like the automated like mechs that would shoot, like anti-aircraft kind of style. Yeah. Like the suits themselves, the figures themselves were original. Yeah.
So I remember discovering Exosquad accidentally. I was watching it was like Sunday morning. And it didn't even capture the show well because it was like these hot dog ace pilots and blah. It was like very 90s campy action hero. I was like, oh, that looks cool, the animation. And I was like, but pass. Then I saw another one where it was the theme song and it was JT Marshall like, help us, we're the resistance. And it showed Phaeton and it was just all these clips in a space battle. I was like, what is this? And then it left Sunday mornings and it came on at 6 a.m. on the weekdays. So as a high school student, as a late middle school high schooler, getting me up at 7 just to make class was hard. But Exosquad is on. I had that alarm set at 5:30.
Yeah, Exosquad got me out.
Tape.
Got me out of
and
bed.
I was up and at them. So
Up and at them.
Can I
just jump in real quick and just say, while we're at the halfway point of this video, if anyone is new here from Adam's channel or my channel, hit subscribe. These guys are a duo of legends. And so you would not be disappointed in hitting subscribe right now today. Do it. In fact, Joe had a mustache earlier and now doesn't have one.
That's true.
He committed.
I did shave from Commissioner Gordon to Batman.
And by the end of the
I
stream,
shaved at the beginning of the stream, and the beard came back.
So by the end of the stream, I'm gonna grow out a Zazel beard.
Yeah, I concentrate a little bit, Super Saiyan style. It pops out. It's very animated, but it works.
I do that too, but it's downstairs, and it's
and early in the chat, early in the stream, that's what I'm talking about. Like that shadow thing was like, oh, Zazel does that. I should do that on other people's channels too. So see, I learned from you, Papa Zazel. Someone comment in the stream. All right, I cannot capture this. So I'm going to talk about one episode because it does such a good. It's actually a two-parter. Such a good job of honing in why I love this show. And this is going to be hard, and this is a deep cut here. But in the middle of the first season, the humans have already lost. So right there, and it's a continuity storyline. So right there, I was like, wait, the humans what's happening right now? They're on their heels. They're getting kicked back. The heroes are just getting slaughtered. And it's in our solar system. So they have a base on Io at Jupiter, which is the moon. And I was like, that's that's a real moon. Like, this is all, it's not make believe. This is really cool. And it starts off with this captain on the left here saying, I don't trust Admiral Winfield. I don't like his leadership. I think he's weak. We should attack. And I was like, huh, this is kind of interesting. This isn't the hot dog show that I was thinking this was going to be about. And then
at least they all had cool hairstyles, though. Not a bad one in the bunch.
No,
it's so
their
weird.
hairstyles are. I mean, I'm emulating it right now. I need to shave some lines in.
Is that Ivan Drago's mom or wife back there?
Hey, I didn't attack your cartoons, okay?
No.
So the hairstyles I actually hated at first, but then Cyberpunk became more popular nowadays, like Cyberpunk 2077, and like they show those same hairstyles. So Exosquad was taking part anime, but also part cyberpunk, like there wasn't much out back then, and blending them together. So no, they're very mockable hairstyles, especially JT's are like 2 of the banners going on there. I'm like, wow,
hold on, I missed this comment. Yes, I have a channel. I haven't decided what direction I'm going to have Toy Shorts. So I mean, yes, Gap After Dark does have a channel, so we should all find that and subscribe as well.
I'm gonna go check that out right after this. So the story goes that the captain has some plans. So he takes Able Squad, which are the main characters, and he sends them on a bogus mission onto Mars. So he just sends them to die. He's like, go take this thing out. It's crucial. It's top secret. No one can know about it. So they go to the planet side. He gets rid of them, and then he pulls a mutiny on the Resolute, which is their flagship, and removes Winfield, who also always reminded me of the surgeon from MASH, the old white-haired guy. If anyone gets that reference, every time I'm like, that's the guy from MASH, man. Pulls a mutiny. Potter? Yes, yeah. So yeah, thank you. Pulls a mutiny and then arrests the only 2 Exosquad main characters, which is Kaz Takagi and then Maggie Weston. There, arrest them. They're all in the brig. They stand against the mutineers, but they lose and they're arrested. And then he goes, hey, I'm taking the fleet, the one human fleet, and I'm going to go fight the Neo-Sapiens who have taken over Earth, Venus, and Mars. Who's with me? And they're like, okay, I guess we're going to go on this mission. He takes the human fleet, and Phaeton, I love the show because it would jump to the villains, and the villains would be like, they're attacking us. This is idiotic. Unless this is a trick.
Yeah, this show is groundbreaking for showing both sides of the story, I think.
Yeah,
it made you empathize with the villains. I mean, so did Batman, but at the same time, like, that was one-offs. This is a continuous story showing both sides of the fight.
It's what you wanted Cobra Commander to be.
Yes.
Phaeton was what you wanted Cobra, like a strategician, someone who was actually like made things in order, made plans. And so when he saw the humans were coming, he was like, well, this is dumb. I'm going to send both my fleets and crush them. Spoilers.
Yeah, he wasn't foiled every episode saying, retreat. he was actually like outmaneuvered or something, or they'd pull off some amazing like mission and get something. And a lot of the times they didn't win.
And you saw them come in, and the humans are like, what do we do? There's 2 fleets here, both outnumber us, and the mutineer captain is like, we're gonna attack. And it goes really badly. And in my mind, I was like, these are the good guys. And they even say in the show, like, that's Maggie. She's like, it's a slaughter. We're getting hammered. And you're watching these frigates and destroyers and cruisers just get blown up. And like people are radioing, like, we don't know what to do. We've lost the guns. And then a ship just blows up, and you're like, what am I watching right now? Like, it's the first like space non-dogfight, but actual fleet combat I ever saw on a show, much less. And the Resolute, which was as important to the show as like the USS Enterprise, like the Millennium Falcon, it is destroyed in this episode, and it crashes not into like Phaeton's flagship, but just into some other ship, and it's destroyed. And the episode ends with everyone going in escape pods, and they lost. And I was like, what? This is phenomenal. And like what it did for me, and then I'm going to shut up here in a second, but what it did for me was this ruined
spoilers.
It ruined it. What it did for me though was that it changed how I started looking at stories, how I started looking at how people present heroes and villains, because people will say gritty. I would counter that in a minute that it's not really gritty and it's not really dark. But it's definitely heavy, and I would say there's a difference.
All right, so Dorlaxian has a good comment. The good guys weren't exactly good, and the bad guys weren't exactly bad. They weren't evil, cackling monsters. They were slaves that revolted and actually won.
Yes,
and I mean, 100%. That sums it up very well. Very succinct. You know, and such a good show. And it, like, again, we talked about adult themes in with Thundercats and Batman and, you know, like kind of thing. But that is Exosquad. crushed it on that level.
Yeah,
like it was watching it was like watching a cartoon war movie. You know, like it was fantastic.
Yeah. And that, I think that's why, like, I champion that cause, because it wasn't like a cackling madman. You're right. It wasn't a coward. Phaeton was very methodical. And the first few episodes, they hadn't even started the war. He was all building this in the background and sending the human fleets out as a diversion to fight pirates. And I was like, what? This is like, I'm so hooked into this storyline. It's so good. And meanwhile, you cut down and you get people in awesome E-frames. Like, look at this thing.
Awesome.
Who wouldn't want to fly this in the comic?
Wow, that's Exosquad.
And it's very sound because there's glass where the human's face is. So you know that makes sense.
And and you could survive.
Nothing's going to come through this, right? Like bullets, and you always face the target, so you know this is safe to put glass there. No, but
don't you imagine in a future of that capacity that they would have clear material that they could see through, and also
transparent aluminum, folks?
No. So actually, what I imagine in the future,
aluminum.
They have enough. They have enough electronics to counter targeting, and the munitions are so strong, anyways, that no armor is going to protect you. So you might as well be able to see stuff. And because if you're hit, you're dead. And that's exactly what the show was. You got hit in E-frame unless you're a main character. You just exploded on screen.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, like as opposed to G.I. Joe, where they would shoot a rattler in the background and you'd see a little parachute pop out. Like, in Exosquad, if they're flying and fighting and there was exosuits in the background, they were blowing up. And there was no guy like going like, and I'm making my way to the ground.
In that same episode, a guy's weapon systems were destroyed, and he was still alive. And the Neo Sapien 3 E-frames were coming in to grab him, and he self-destructed. You watch him; he's like, "No, I'm not going to let him take me." And he does the cyberjack, blows him up, and takes them out. And I was like, that show was heavy. Like you see
he
guy
tapped his cyberjack on, not off.
Yeah, cyberjack on. So so. Again, you guys were like, I've barely seen this. So I'm like, I've watched it 1,000 times. But for me, it was a monumental show. Like,
okay, so this comment hits home to me very, very hard. But the cartoon artwork also reminded me a lot of G.I. Joe. I would use my Exosquad with G.I. Joe, which is exactly what I used to do. But like, and Dom, we also did that. You know, kind of. So like, incorporating Exosquad toys into the things that I was currently playing with, like G.I. Joe, was very easy to do. They were a little shorter. They were like 3 inches versus 3 3/4. But you could kind of fudge it and sort of make it work in your brain. And just the functionality of those suits, and you could actually physically put a toy or a toy figure into the toy robot suit. Fantastic. Love those toys.
I just want to say.
Go ahead.
Look at this handsome man.
All eyes on you.
It was only about an hour or so ago when Joe was like, I could not play with Thundercats and He-Man the same because they were so drastically different scales.
We're talking 5 and 6 and 10 to 12 to 13 to 14. Like, we're talking, I was older.
Down. You wrote those notes down.
Yeah. Well, I mixed Care Bears and Masters of the Universe, so scale was no issue for me.
That's fine. They had those bears in the Thundercats, so I played with a girl cousin of mine, and she'd bring her stuffies over. I was like, oh, I've seen that episode of Thundercats where they had the little fuzzy bears. That's fine, yeah. So, Exosquad and G.I. Joe. I wanted it to fit so badly that as long as I didn't look at the pilot in there, I could make it the quick swap, like the old playsets where you spin it around. I could be like, and you're out of the suit. Here he is.
Yeah, you're spinning the Batcave. He's Bruce Wayne now.
Exactly.
He's
like,
not everybody is the same height though. So you can be a little bit taller or shorter.
Imagine that they built all the juice box suits, and then they all showed up, but they were only good for people that were 4.5 feet tall. Like recruiting poster out there. We want you. If you
know what, Adam?
Literally space jockeys, right? Like
on that note, though, I mean, it's to Dom's credit that I would really start mixing those together in a serious way. Like I kind of did it when I was young, but like it was when I was way older and shouldn't have been playing with toys anymore, hanging out with Dominic, that we really started mixing those together. And I was like, I guess I'm okay with this sort of. Half of them are aliens anyway, so like you can kind of pretend.
I tease. I mix scales all the time. I had no problem.
So when I was younger, it was harder for me to like break my brain of that. But as I got older, absolutely. I was just like, whatever, this works. Like it's too good not to.
Yeah, that's what I am forcing this to make sure I get to play with these amazing E-frames into the rest of the toys.
Those toys,
and there was nothing else like them.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Do you gents have any of them in your current hands or collection right now?
It's a little bit like my G.I. Joe conundrum. I've seen the suits out there with no figures in them, and I've seen figures for the suit, and I'm like, if I'm gonna dive into this, I want to start with at least one figure and suit together, and then build from there.
Yeah. You can find a beater suit pretty cheap on Macari or eBay or anything like that for like $10 if you're not worried about getting all the antennas and you're okay with the Cyberjack being broken and it doesn't have the power chip. If you're okay, and Adam, that actually fits in your wheelhouse perfectly because you recreate all that stuff. You can get a beater suit pretty well for like 10 or 12-ish bucks, especially like a Deleon. And then I'd be curious to see somebody actually mod that to fit a full Joe inside there. And then the figures do get a little more expensive because they broke or they got lost.
Decent amount of room in there with some of them. You might...
You got a 3/4 ogre one maybe, but then they're all like a little too thick, and the 25th style
just spread the rubber band out a little bit and and just put them into the clip.
So Dom, let's say this. Joe Fest, you and I will do a video together. Be looking for an Exosquad suit to modify at Joe Fest.
So, by the way, Joe and I, so I know Adam and Zazel have been like, hey, we're going to Joe Fest. Joe and I were like, hey, I think I can go to Joe Fest, man. What about you? He's like, yeah, I think so too. So
we're like 95% coming.
So unfortunately work was like, I think we're going to do this thing. I was like, I'll be at a wedding or I'll be at a funeral. I'll be at something. My grandma
whatever
died.
Whatever event is important enough.
I will be at that weekend. That excludes me from this thing. They're like, okay, so I am there, man. I'm coming.
Okay. Well, we need to have a Joe at Joe Fest. It just fits.
I told my wife the name of the G.I. Joe convention because she'd literally never heard of it, which fair, but and she just started cackling and laughing. So I mean, like. She's down with it, It's she's actually out of town that weekend, so really I just have to find somebody to watch my children, so I can go, hang out.
Strangers
with
will do
other
that for you.
Giant children.
Oh yeah, for free.
So the factions on Earth and Venus were great because they had resistance that was continuing on Earth, while the Exo fleet got pushed into the further reaches of the solar system. And then you come back, and the resistance member hated the fleet. They're like, you abandoned us. And then you find out there's other Earth resistance. So there's Australia. They have a different faction. And you get to Venus, and they're so cutthroat. They actually kidnap the Exosquad and are going to ransom them just to have food. Like, that's how desperate they were. I was like, this show. And then later they rally them together and like, but like spoilers, some of those characters don't make it to see the actual liberation of their own planet. And then one of them sees the liberation of the planet, but then dies in like a small guerrilla thing. So, and it also lends a lot to history. Like they borrow so much and they quote, what's his name? MacArthur, and they quote like several actual historians and they reference those campaigns while they're campaigning on Venus and Mars. I'm also a big history buff.
Hearing you talk about it, it reminds me a lot of like Starship Troopers and how it was kind of like this sci-fi take on like Real World War.
Yes, exactly,
similar. Yeah. I would say. Would the new mech suit from Avatar 2 toy line be a good size? It is. You can, it's 7-inch scale toys, but that's for the avatars or like the Na'vi or whatever, the alien race. The humans are actually small, so like that robot suit works great for Joe.
What's funny is Joe and I dogged that toy before. Because we're like, it's got that big glass cockpit, blah blah. And I looked at all my beloved E-frames. I'm like, same thing that I
same thing. But the Matrix one is the worst though, because it's
it's just bars,
a giant walker and it's just bars, steel bars. And you're
just don't like.
You don't even have glass.
Yeah, I don't like the aesthetics of the Avatar one too. It's got weird feet and stuff, and it's just
that's honestly what it comes down to for me. Payne's Toy Sample said, all my toys mixed G.I. Joe, Motu, Thundercats, and Silverhawks all existed together.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
I couldn't do G.I. Joe with the fantasy guys, but anything that was fantasy or mutants, I could push them all together.
I only did in one scenario. The Never-Ending Story introduced the idea of the Nothing to me. So me and my brothers took our constructs, made a giant spaceship, and we would make the world rip apart in one room, and everyone would jump into a spaceship, fly to another room, and like pick up the G.I. Joes, and then fly over to another room as it ripped apart, pick up the Ninja Turtles, and so on. And we played that many times over because we're just like, this is a fun concept. Let's mix all the toys together. And who died and who lived. Like, Raphael died, but Leo lived. But he's next to Snake Eyes, and so on and so on. But yeah, I would play specific games where I mixed everything together, but mostly I would separate them, Star Brigade with the G.I. Joes and Exosquads in there,
That's a pretty easy fix. Joe, I would even call that a no-brainer. Would you?
I mean, yeah, it's
a no-brainer, man. Star Brigade and Exosquad together. Yeah. And Gaz, the ghost in the corner. You want to lend it here?
I'm sitting here I'm just looking at all these Exosquad toys and stuff, and I'm like, wow, these are pretty cool.
Be careful.
Yeah.
No, don't be careful. No, don't listen to them. Buy them all.
Be frivolous.
The series is actually streaming on Peacock for free.
Yes, it is. And my boys, much like the animated series, Batman the animated series, hate it. They hate Exosquad.
Oh, that's a shame because it's so good. Again, wait till they're 10ish. Like 11ish. You know, I think it's a little early for that. The serious parts of that to make sense.
Good Lord. Coffins of pop. That is deep, man. That's awesome. Popsicles next to bury the Joes.
Remember, what was the movie where Fred Savage buried all his Joes?
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking that he had that huge war and he had to bury like a bunch of
the boy who could fly. You remember his brother?
I was going to say,
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, so it's his boy. He couldn't talk, and Herman Munster was his dad. And then his
Herman Munster.
Yeah, his sister would make him noodles all the time.
Is that the name of the movie?
The Boy Who Could Fly.
Yeah, The Boy Who Could Fly. Yeah, Fred Savage.
That's where he would bury all his Joes?
Yeah, and then his older brother would just sit on top of the house and do this and not talk. Yeah.
So Alexa, I'm trying to champion this to you old farts, you old dads, I know it's hard to like, I've only got like 30 minutes of time. And honestly, like I'm the same way when I actually get free time, it's not usually in front of a TV. And if I do put something on, it's something I want to be familiar with. So I don't have to really pay attention. It's running in the background and I can autopilot and be like, Venture Brothers. Like Venture Brothers is my go-to to have on and just let that run endlessly. Rick and Morty is like another one. But Exosquad is one of those ones that even as an adult now, I go, everybody shut up and watching Exosquad right now. And I love The Expanse too. Like there's, that is like, I compare those two shows together and like Exosquad pales compared to The Expanse, but I'm like, everyone stop. The Expanse is on. I want to hear this. I would encourage you guys to just take a peek on Peacock. Go check this thing out. It holds up really well. You can tell when they skimped on the animation sometimes. There's like a suit.
Every show.
Yeah. You can tell when you're like, oh man, you guys rushed this part, or that's post edit, adding in or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I was calling out Batman, but there's specific episodes where you can be like, that one they put their budget in, that one they phoned in.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing. You can see it.
But I would say like, hey, give it a shot. The first few episodes are relatively slow. But it's awesome to see what it builds into with like this whole war, and they're still doing stuff. There's, and I haven't even touched on the jump jet troopers, and I could seriously, I could probably have a channel where I just talk Exosquad. Like there's just so much stuff, but yeah, I'll stop because we're almost hitting the third hour mark.
Don, could you help me out? A vehicle I have is a pod pilot, but the aliens that turned good.
Pod pilot, the aliens turned good.
Could he be talking about Marsala?
Yeah, so the
is it Exosquad specific?
The green Cedar 2-1 definitely had Marsala in there with a rear co-pilot. That's the one. So, hey, so thanks everybody who is watching this. Please, Joe, you did such a good job of being like, hey, if you missed part 1, go back to Zazel's channel. We
absolutely
Deep
do that.
And Sunbow, that was fun. He put a little trivia game in there, and then we hopped over to Adam's channel to talk Thundercats. And real Ghostbusters because that fake Ghostbusters popped out their animated series beforehand. But yeah, guys, thanks so much for jumping on here. Really appreciate it. Some of my favorite pieces. Yeah.
Gaz, thanks for being on.
Yeah. Hey, sorry that you're not represented in some sort of avatar form.
Zazel, thank you, sir.
But yeah, it's been great. And please sub these guys'
Adam,
channels.
thank you, sir.
No problem, Joe. Anytime, my friend. Anytime.
Yeah. Soulmate. We're soulmates.
No, exactly. Me and Joe and Fruit Punch, we are all good friends, and we're gonna.
Yeah, Fruit Punch. Yeah, Fruit Punch is here too. All right, that's been cartoons and cereal. I think we won toys and cartoons.
I think this stream was probably so good we never need to do another.
We're done.
That's it. No more streams.